Hello everyone, this is Pastor Michele, and I'm videoing here. I'm recording down at Shades of Grace. And for any of you who might be new to Words of Inspiration, this is a follow-up to the previous week Zoom group that meets on Wednesday at 10 a.m. And if you're interested in being a part of that, you just need to call the church office, and the numbers on the screen at the end of the video tonight, and give us your name and your email. And that's really all it takes for me to get an invitation to you. So what we've been doing, we've been looking at this concept from the beginning of the year that's become very popular, and this is part 2 of what's called one word focus. And one word focus part 1 is will explain more about how this works. And I did a whole Words of Inspiration night on just how to kind of frame it, and what it basically is it's an alternative to doing New Year's resolutions. Sorry, I forgot for a second. New Year's resolutions. It's already the middle of January. I'm not thinking of New Year's resolutions because most folks will tell you that they don't really work. They're me-centered. They're not God-centered. And our grief group is a God-centered group, and we're trying to lean on the Lord and depend on the Lord and trust the Lord for guidance on how to walk through our new reality. So in this part 2, what I did was I'm going to review a little bit, but I asked the folks that have been attending and been part of the group. Some of them were able to get me a contribution, but I like to present to you in their own words, because that's what has power. Our testimony and the things that God has brought us through that we've shared personally is very, very powerful to share with others on their grief journey as well. So this whole focusing on one word, in my previous video I also shared that I kind of did a spin-off on that, because one word might work for this month, but by next month your life may have transformed and there's another word that's more important or more dominant in what you're focusing on. So it doesn't have to be one word stretched out over the whole year, but it can be, or it can be a word a week. It can be, whatever God shows you, but it's just this concept that and this process. And the process is kind of based on Philippians 1:4. He, meaning God, who began a good work in you, will carry it on until the day of Christ Jesus. And so our life is an ongoing process. That's why I like not to just pick one word for the year, but for me, it works best if I just flow with the Holy Spirit, and as a word comes up in devotions or in prayer or in readings or in a sermon or wherever, that then I focus on that word, and that's perfectly acceptable too. So there's 6 R's, R words. You take the process through reflecting, looking back over the last year, and then repenting, looking away from the mistakes that you might have made last year in relation to a particular focus. Renewing, look up and ask God, what does God want for this new year? Refresh, look for vision to see for the future how God would like me to focus. What do I want to be different? Resolve, look out towards others and make what I've learned in my own words and share that with others. And then to record, which I talk a lot about the importance of journaling when you're on a grief journey, how important it is to keep a balance and to see about those R words or anything else that God shows you, so that when you have a day when you think things aren't going so well, you just you know, well, yesterday was a good day because you journaled that it was and you put down things that were good, instead of saying, oh, I never have a good day, or when's the last time I had a good day, or I can't get one foot in front of the other because nothing ever goes right. Well, that may not be true. And if you journal, you can go back and you can look at a progression and you can see what things have gone well for you and what things you're still looking to the Lord to, lead and guide and answer your prayers and to show you, what to do. So all of these things kind of fit together as a process. So I asked the group and those that were on the Zoom to either think about a word that was last year's word and then just elaborate on that a little bit. Or if you don't have a word from last year that describes the year or whatever, that what do you think God might want you to focus on at the beginning of 2023 in terms of your grief and moving forward in your life? So one of the Zoom participants said last year's word was strength. And there was a lot of moving forward. His wife had passed away at the end of 2021. So 2022 was a year of moving on and firsts. And he said each day presented a new challenge. And I asked him, well, how did you get through those challenges? What things were helpful to you? And his answer was prayer. He commented and shared with us that he has a godson that lives in Alabama and frequently visits and calls every day for support. He's a businessman and has business relationships in his community. He doesn't live in Kingsport, lives in the Greenville area, and has friends and business acquaintances that he's in contact with. So very strong support system he's talking about here. He's also been reaching out. He's found strength to reach out and help a neighbor from major surgery who lives next door to him. He's attending his local church, and we had a lively discussion about his signing up for the senior singles group. He doesn't know anything about it, and so some of us volunteered to go with him and just to kind of, go as support and see what this is all about. But it's offered through his local church. So moving forward, okay, and making progress in that regard. And so he said that he felt like this year's word that he would start out with was clarity. He wants to be open and available to whatever God has for him and needs that clarity. So that was the other day on Zoom. So now some people have emailed me with information since the meeting, and this is another gal that was on the group the other day, and she said last year was one of illness, one illness after another, after another, after another. She's been providing childcare for young grandchildren, and she said everything they got, I got. She said I was sick, I was tired, and just hit repeat. Sick, tired, back and forth like that all year. Excuse me. So she said this year's word is health. And she said, I want to focus and spend time taking care of myself. Actually, taking care of my health needs, taking care of myself. Well, then another gal sent me an email with this information, and she said this year's word is joy. Oh, and by the way, people had no trouble. I mean, they could just pinpoint. It was so wonderful to see that they didn't have to say, gee, I wonder, I think when you're on a grief journey, you're so inclined to seek the Lord, listen to the Lord. You're looking for every little minute step that he may be taking you through. And not one person had any difficulty whatsoever actually identifying a word from last year and for this year where they want to go. So that was really encouraging, and I would encourage all of you that are listening that you seek the Lord and ask him where he's taking you this year in your new reality and what would be the focus for you. So this gal said this year's word is joy. Lots of reasons for choosing joy. But this word it's the bottom line. It's joy. I want to bring joy to others and experience joy myself. You see, and that goes back to the resolve, look out and make this your own to share with others. So looking outward to share with others and finding joy in this new journey. Choosing a one-word goal allows my goal to be incorporated into so many areas of my life. I will find this easier to connect with on a daily basis because there's a specific focus. And she said it's a little bit like journaling and documenting what went well for the day, kind of documenting in our we have gratitude journals as well. And I can see how that would tie in very, very nicely with this one. Your word that you're focusing on is joy, and when you're grateful, there seems to be a lot of joy accompanying that. They kind of partner, and so documenting and journaling that will definitely go nicely and give her lots of encouragement. The next gal that I did talk with this morning, and she wanted to make sure that this was on the video, and she said, I don't have any trouble picking it. She goes, last year and this year, trust. Trust. Same word. And she said, I'm trusting God to take care of me, every need that I have, and my family, because she's had some adult family members' sons move in with her. And she said to take care of all of us since my husband has gone on to be with the Lord. Now this gal is 84 years old. And I said, how do you walk through that? How does that become a reality for you to trust the Lord? I know a lot of people say you just need to trust the Lord, you need to have faith, you just trust. And I said, how does that play out to you? And she said, because He's already done that over my lifetime. And at 84 years old, she has the right, she claims the right to say that. She has a lot of years of experience walking with the Lord. She said, past experiences, He's already done that over my lifetime. And she prays, she reads the Word, and then she shared a little personal story that she continues to use this same prayer. She said, God gave me assurance when I was 12 years old and I gave my life to Him. She said, I didn't know how to pray, so I prayed the childhood prayer that a lot of us grew up with and know. Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. Okay? And she prayed that prayer. That's the only thing she knew to pray, and she prayed. And she said that night, she had a dream, and she saw Jesus outside her kitchen window with His arms stretched open wide. And she said that she heard Him say, I'm going to take care of you. And this was at 12 years old, and she remembered that. Well, eventually, this is the beauty of the story. I love when God does these kinds of things, because eventually she and her husband moved into that childhood home. That's where she lives right now. Moved into that childhood home a number of years ago. And that's the same home where she had that dream and the vision of Jesus out that kitchen window. And she said, when my husband became ill, I would look out that window and I would remember that dream. I would remember the vision of Jesus standing there with His arms open wide saying, I will take care of you. And that all builds trust. I mean, that's where trust comes from, when you experience those things. And when her husband became ill and he finally went on to be with the Lord, she said she began praying that prayer again at night after she said her now adult prayers, if you will, that she would pray, and she would pray over the day, and she would say her regular prayers and devotions. But she started to include, again, now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. Because that gave her assurance, and it gave her comfort, and it gave her peace now in her grief walk. And I thought that was just precious that she shared that this morning with me. She said, I want to be sure that you're able to record this with all the other comments. And I'm just eternally grateful for the openness of the folks in the group, how comfortable they are, because they know how important it is to share these things with those of you who are viewing. And so I put some things down. I did some reflecting too on last year. Excuse me, I'm just going to get a sip here. Last year, probably my one main focus was health throughout the whole year. It affected my whole life. The previous year, I had a diagnosis and some minor surgery, and then last year, starting in 2022, I went through different medications as different treatments, trying one, and I reacted to it, then another medication, and I reacted to that, and another medication. Finally, I just consulted with my doctor, and I just said, I just can't do this. It was around June, and I was still having reactions, and even friends were commenting and saying, you're just not yourself, and I didn't have any energy, and I wasn't sleeping, and it was just, and so we agreed that I would be monitored with screenings, and I would not try to use any of the medication, and I felt like I lost a lot of time in my life last year. I had to minimize activities. I had to cut way back. And so I started to focus on a little technique that I learned when I was an educator. And this research had shown that for folks to effectively and efficiently and effectively manage anything, it can't exceed 7 categories. Like you need to kind of compartmentalize into about 7 categories max. That's all you can really be effective with. And when you get overloaded with that, when you have more than that on your plate, you become totally ineffective. Or you focus on one and leave the others alone, and you just can't balance it all out. So I thought, well, maybe I'll try to compartmentalize my life into a few categories like that, and then I will try to balance out like the daily choices and things without feeling guilty about it. You know, when you're on a grief journey, oftentimes your life feels like a runaway train. It feels like a lot of things. We've talked about roller coaster rides. We've talked about hurdling. We've talked about, there's a lot of imagery, but I think of a runaway train like you look around and you've got household management things to do, you've got personal things to do, you've got financial things to do. You need to still relate to your family if you have a job. I mean, you know, I'm just throwing things out there as categories, and you can make your own list of 7 things. You know, there's spiritual things you need to do. I have ministry, and they all kind of collide at the same time. It seems like you need groceries at the same time, you need to do the laundry at the same time, you need to, maybe if you have children, take your kids somewhere, maybe you know, it just seems like collision course, and there's finances you can't let go, and bills to pay, and just things that you have to manage. And so prioritizing became another word, prioritizing according to those 7 categories and trying to balance it, and realizing that if I didn't get to that one category today, then maybe I would get to it tomorrow, and not feel guilty because you weren't super person trying to manage all of these things which were totally out of control. And eventually things slow down, and eventually things kind of find their little niche, and you can kind of get, you know, you're not so peaks and valleys, and kind of gets to be a little more smooth ride and a little more stable and fewer hurdles, and you get to put things in order, and you get a life flow eventually. And so, but last year I really needed to prioritize because I was making up for lost time. I was making up for almost a year, from the diagnosis to the surgery to the recovery to the medication that didn't, you know, that didn't agree with me. So it was almost a whole year's time. So so this year, the word I'm starting out with, because I don't just stick to one word, but my word is wait. How important it is to wait on God's timing. And I learned that over last year also. So Psalm 27:14 is an interesting verse, and I'll share that with you. It says, wait, hope for, and expect the Lord. Be brave and be of good courage. Let your heart be stout, and enduring. And I love that word stout because it's not a word that we use very often in this generation. But I thought about some interpretations of that. Stout means determined. It can mean uncompromising. It can also mean strong, being of strong character. And then I was reading a devotion, interestingly enough, this morning when I was finalizing these notes, and it was on waiting. And it said that waiting on the Lord purifies your faith, waiting builds character, and waiting renews your strength. Well, my definition of stout there was strong character, and here it says it renews your strength and it builds character. So it's strong character. So I'll read that verse again in Psalm 27. Wait, hope for, and expect the Lord. Be brave and of good courage. Let your heart be stout and enduring. And I think that that's good advice for anybody that's on a grief journey, that's had some losses or an individual loss, even if it's been years, still that you focus yourself and you wait on the Lord and hope and expect for the Lord, because He will encourage us in our waiting. And I can testify to that. He will encourage us in our waiting on Him. So in the days that we're living in, I think another piece of good advice for everyone is just be kind to yourself. We have too many external stressors. And I saw this cartoon, and I wish I could have put it up on the screen, but I think you'll get the gist of it. Over the last couple of years, we've had major stressors with COVID, with supply chain shortages. I can't tell you. And so this cartoon said, what has the greatest value? In the year 2020, it was a picture of a bed of just cash, bills, dollar bills. Money still had the most value in 2020. In 2021, it had a pile of toilet paper. Do you remember the supply chain shortage of toilet paper during the COVID pandemic? In 2022, I had trouble figuring this out, and then I looked at it closely. It was wooden boards. There was a shortage of building supply materials, and they all of a sudden got this great value to them. And of course, if you're paying any attention to 2023 right now, it was a whole pile of eggs. Do I need to say any more? We have these things that are coming at us, whether we're in grief or not in grief. Everyone's dealing with the same thing. We've got all these external stressors. We say, now where did this egg shortage come from? Where did this egg thing happen? This avian flu, bird flu, and now all of a sudden eggs are $12 a dozen, or whatever. And I saw another cartoon that said it used to be cheaper by the dozen. Well, not anymore. I mean, every time we turn around, there's another external stressor, like we don't have enough stress already. So that's why I'm sharing these things. Grief can be overwhelming. It can be exhausting. It can just feel like your whole world is turned upside down. Even after a long period of time, something comes along, like some of these external stressors, and all of a sudden we find ourselves at a loss of how to manage our life. So there was another visual that I saw that really didn't have to do with grief, but I liked it because it was kind of how to organize yourself. And it said that can't clean a whole room, just clean a corner of it. Can't do all the dishes, just clean one or two dishes. If you can't take a whole shower, at least wash your face. Always look for the one thing that you can do. And then it goes on and it says, this is how I tied it in tonight. It says, always look to the thing you can do with the energy and focus you do have. And then it goes on to say, little wins pave the way for bigger wins. 1% beats 0% of effort. Basically, that's what it's talking about. But I love that. It said, do what you can do with the energy and focus that you do have. So that's how it relates to my message tonight, because we each have been picking out a focus. Hopefully you've been thinking about your life in the last year or this coming year, and you're getting some kind of a focus. And do the things you can do with that focus in mind. And there's another actual whole words of inspiration, and I didn't put the date of it, but you can go on our website on our Facebook page, Shades of Grace, a United Methodist Congregation Facebook page, and you can click the video, the little video menu, and it'll pull up all the videos, and you can search through there for words of inspiration. And earlier last year I did a whole section on what was called an isolation well-being checklist. And I was reminded of some of the things on there, so I'll read you some of the things on there too. It was to choose an activity when you're feeling isolated, when you're feeling lost, when you're feeling that you can't, kind of get your life together. Again, this has to do with focusing. Clean one space at a time. Tend to something living or growing. Like maybe get some house plants or something like that, or a pet. Reach out to a human outside your home. Stay connected with the community, with your support system. Do one thing to get your heart rate up, something that is going to be a self-care kind of thing, a health focus. Do one thing just because you want to, just so that you do something like a hobby. Do one thing that you'll be glad you did later, something that'll bring you joy, as one of our gals said she was focusing on. And the last thing says, get in at least one good laugh each day. And we talk about that here at Shades of Grace too, that it's important to laugh, that laughter is like a medicine. It's healthy, it's healing to us, and it's important that we find something to laugh about each day. So I hope that this gives you a focus for the new year. I hope it gives you some things to think about. We're probably going to do an in-person Zoom lunch coming up in February. If anyone's interested in joining us, sitting in on that, you can call the church and get information about that. We'd be glad to have you. It was suggested that we take a word list that I had compiled from last year, quite a lengthy list of focus words, just to hand out as prompts, something that could give you something to think about. Or we could cut up the words and we could share them, and we could take a couple, each of us, and keep those for a month or so till we meet again, and then shuffle them and take some other ones if you're having difficulty coming up with a focus for yourself. So I do hope that this helps with starting a new year, that we're not looking for empty promises. I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, but that we really get a godly focus, and we let God lead and guide that focus in everything that we do, and journal some of the results and share with others, and be kind to yourself. And remember that 1% is better than 0%. You'll feel so much better if you even focus and accomplish 1% of something, just one small task, like one pot, wash one dish. I mean, that's kind of extreme, but I think you get the point, that if you can't do a whole thing, like right now, I probably have 3 loads of laundry that I'm behind on. Well, I'm not going to try and do all 3 today. If I get one done, I'll get one done. And that'll be okay, and I won't feel guilty about that. So I know there are other things that can't wait, and I understand that. There are other things you can't wait on paying bills. You can't wait sometimes on buying groceries. Sometimes you can't wait on things if you have others living in your household that you might need to attend to for their needs. Responsibilities at your job, responsibilities like I have here in ministry. So I understand there are those things that cannot necessarily be put off, but evaluate. Take some time to evaluate what you're doing and see if there's a way that you can focus, that you can allow God, who began a good work in you, to carry it out to completion, that you will be successful, and you will see that things will settle down, and your focus will change. It'll change as the year goes on. as you accomplish certain things, you'll continue to focus on that, but God will add another focus to you, and He'll branch things out for you. So thank you for listening. I know this is a little longer than most of my lessons, but I wanted to cover all of this tonight so that it wouldn't be too far removed from the other, I think it was 2 weeks ago when we did the initial one word. So you can go back and listen to that and get a foundation for that. And just praying for all of you out there. And if you have questions, please call the church. I am available to help and to meet with you and to have conversation with you. And think about coming to our in-person lunch in February. So good night and God bless.